Alright, in today's video, we're going to talk about the Rodecaster Pro, the original one, and ask a question, is it still relevant in 2023? Spoiler alert, it depends. Let's talk about it. Well, hello, Kevin here. I'm a musician in Ontario, Canada, and you're watching my musical journey. So stay tuned. So, is the original Rodecaster still relevant in 2023? That's the question. I picked one up recently, and I'm trying to decide on what I want to do with it. I've got a number of different applications. I'm a musician. I am starting a podcast, among other things. So it's a matter of trying to figure out what should I be doing with this here device. Now, of course, it's all pretty and has a whole bunch of colors and RGB and all that kind of fun stuff. But does it actually do anything? Is it worth having? So what I want to start with is I want to look at what is actually missing compared to the latest and greatest. And in order to do that, we got to talk about what it actually does do, which is honestly quite a bit. So to give you an idea, if you're not familiar already, this unit will have 4 XLR inputs, as you can see on the back here. I'll go to this camera. 4 XLR inputs. You've got the 4 headphone connections, and you've got a TRRS for a cell phone. You've got monitor out. You've got USB-C, which is low latency. It works well with trying to do post-process or live processing of effects. You've got a micro SD card slot, a power button, which is nice. There is one headphone connection on the front up there, just the one, and a whole bunch of buttons and fun stuff. So 8 pads for different sound effects. You've got Bluetooth. You've got 8 faders, so you can do inputs 1 through 4. You can do computer sound. You can do cell phone, Bluetooth. Those could be the same, but depending. And then that's the level for your pads. These buttons here enable you to listen to just isolated tracks to see, like, pre-fader, what they actually sound like. That's what the green button's for. The red is for the basically muting each individual track. And then, as you can see here, I get into settings for track 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. as I hit those buttons. Bluetooth, pads, etc. So yeah, it's practical, but it's practical for who? That's the big question. Alright, so in terms of software, what it'll actually have is, as I'm actually showing on the screen right now, we have high pass filter, noise gate, de-esser, compressor, and then the Aphex stuff is big bottom, which is going to add some low frequency to your sound, and aural exciter, which is trying to just make it sound brighter and that kind of stuff. So if it's a little flat sounding, it's going to give you a bit of a peak. You can actually pick the frequency. So practical. It also has, if I go to home and if we actually go to the settings, we also have the ability to do, mix minus, and we can also do ducking. So basically you can have a person talking, you can have music in the background, and when that person begins talking, the music will duck out of the way basically and turn down. A lot of practical use. There are things you can do in here. Are there things that you can do in here that are exclusive to here and that you can't do in post-processing? Not really. For the most part, you can do the majority of what's in here in post as well. So with those functions, the question is, who's it for, right? So the way I see it, it's for podcasters, it's for streamers, and it is for people doing voiceover stuff. So it can basically handle it all in the unit itself, and as soon as basically you hit record, what you get out the other side is ideally project ready or completed. So that's all well and good, but who is it not for? And in that regard, I'm going to definitely say musicians, bands, live performers, people not looking for more RGB lights in their studio. We all know that we have a problem with RGB lights. I mean, sure, it looks pretty, but you know, you get enough frickin' RGB already. With that in mind, what does the Rodecaster Pro 2 actually offer? That's a good question. Pro 2 has not just one, but 2 USB ports. And one of them will be a multi-channel out and in. And then the second port is meant for either a cell phone or a secondary computer or audio source. It's meant for a cell phone or a second audio device, such as a computer. And it's just a 2-channel in, 2-channel out. So reduced capability on that second channel, but it still has the ability to go with a USB-C port into it and actually literally connect the 2 machines. So I've got a Windows machine and a Mac, and in that application you could actually use it with both. Not many interfaces allow you to do that. Certainly the Rodecaster Pro, the original one, cannot. Then from there you've got combo TRS and XLR jacks, so you can actually put guitars in, not just microphones. Or you could put, you could put a guitar into here, but you'd have to run a DI box and stuff like that. And the new one is actually tailored for instrument input. So it's not just a line input, it's actually instrument/line. It also has upgraded preamps. It is smaller. It has a tilt screen, which is kind of nice. This one, if you're at the wrong angle, you can't really see it very well. It's also got 8 banks of sound pads, so instead of the 8 here, you actually have 8 groupings of 8, giving you a total of 64. And it also has additional voice processing. So it's better, it's more practical. It's more practical in a studio. Does it add a ton? Yes and no. There's going to be more firmware updates likely that improve its performance in the future too. So could be a good unit. Originally, it's about $200 more than this one, $200 US more than this one. You can tend to find the Rodecaster Pro in the, say, $350 to $450 US range used, and new they're still around like $549, $599, that kind of idea. And whereas the Rodecaster Pro 2 is typically like $699, tends to compare pretty well. So the main things that you see in the Rodecaster Pro 2 is that it adds the ability for musicians to actually get some practical benefit. You can input your guitar, you can actually play with plugins on your computer and get a good live sound, which is nice. But can it do everything you need at this point? Kinda, sort of. It's really close. I don't have one because it doesn't quite cut it. It's actually really difficult to try to find an interface that does what you need to do, especially if you're looking to have it do a lot of stuff. I record videos out in the field, so a lot of these devices get pretty big and not very practical. I've also got the Zoom L8 mixing console, which is similar in size to this, and it does a lot of it and should do pretty much everything I need, but still there's things that it doesn't do. So fun. Always on the hunt for more gear to actually do the right thing. which is frustrating. And expensive, by the way. If we're looking at other equipment out there, we've got the Rodecaster Pro. We just talked about the Rodecaster Pro 2. There's other devices like the Zoom PodTrack P4. That's going to be, well, in comparison to this, kind of a toy, but has similar functions. Its primary focus is to be a portable podcasting unit. Then we've got the PodTrack P8, which is actually going to be fairly similar to this. There's a few things here and there that it doesn't have that this guy does. So it's in the ballpark, but like in kind of typical Zoom fashion, it tends to be on the cheaper side. So therefore it misses out on some features as well. Along with the PodTrack P8, there's the Behringer Flow 8, which is quite similar again. It has a little bit in the way of instrument inputs where the PodTrack P4 and P8 do not. They're just XLR. But still, the Behringer limits you on headphone outputs and controls and stuff like that. So it's not, really it doesn't compare to this. Then you've got the Tascam Mixcast 4, which tends to fall kind of somewhere in the middle between this guy and the Rodecaster Pro 2. So that's the new one. It does have the combo jacks, but they're not designed for instruments. So if you want to actually record stuff, you can get microphones, no problem, but you really got to use a DI box, and it's just not optimal for guitars and that kind of idea. Then you've also got something like the Tascam Portacapture X8 and X6. Those really are very similar, just the amount of inputs is about what changes on them. They are very capable units. They do not have a lot of headphone control, whereas something like this actually has 4 headphone controls with separate levels. However, those portable units, I've got the Tascam Portacapture X8 here. I'm actually using it as an audio interface on my Windows machine right now. So if you're curious how that works, let me know in the comments below if you want to see some sort of videos on that unit to describe, how it works and all that kind of stuff in that application. What is nice about that unit though is that it offers 32-bit float. However, depending on the software you're using, it may or may not work. If you're recording directly on the unit, great, awesome. Any other application, it's probably safe to assume that 32-bit float is not going to do much for you. I also learned something recently about the implementation of 32-bit float, and just because a company says it's 32-bit float, don't believe the hype, and that has to do with a Zoom unit, but I have a strange suspicion that a lot of the companies are doing the same kind of thing. So it's more of that their software supports 32-bit float, but it won't actually give you, it'll give you the ability to recover a lot, but not what the full 32-bit float was actually designed to give you. So we can go over that in a future video. That's a bit of a tangent anyways for this video. So I realize I've muddled everything up. You're like, holy crap, there's so much gear out there, should I actually get the Rodecaster Pro? Well, I mean, there's other options out there. Are there better options? Probably. But it really comes down to like what exactly you're doing and what kind of price you're going to get on something like this. So basically, if you find a half decent deal on it, should you get it? Maybe. I mean, it looks pretty on your desk, so there's that. But yeah, the reason I'm going to say that this probably isn't terribly relevant in 2023 is that there's a new kid in town, released about a week ago. It is from everybody's favorite company in the world, Boss. Everybody's used Boss, everybody knows who they are. Obviously they can make a good product, not saying that their GT series of guitar processors are good, but that's another story. They have a new interface. It's called the Gigcaster. They make the Gigcaster 5 and the Gigcaster 8. And if you're looking for an interface to do basically everything, I haven't seen a better one than that at this stage. So, I mean, it has guitar amp effects built in, only on one channel, but it's built in on channel 1. Any of the other channels, you can actually use their vocal processor. There's a whole bunch of different things that you can adjust in there. There's a whole bunch of presets. It's set up like a modeling amplifier, basically, but for vocals. It's got 4 combo jacks. It's got Bluetooth. It's got 32-bit float. The Gigcaster 5 has 2 headphone outputs with adjustable levels. The Gigcaster 8 has, I don't know how 5 turns to 8, but 8 has 4 headphone outs. Got a 4.3 inch screen, same size as what the Rodecaster has. Basically everything you could need. So that unit actually caters to musicians, people teaching lessons, podcasting, all that kind of stuff. So in all reality, that's probably the main unit you should be considering at this point. Okay, so in summary, is this still relevant for 2023? Probably not. And if you're a podcaster, streamer, or a voiceover artist, it's going to do everything you need it to do. And it's going to sound good doing it. The only limitation, perhaps, is if you got one of the Shure SM7B microphones. It's got a fair bit of output, but you're pretty much going to have to crank the levels. Outside of that, though, there's ways around that with the Fethead or Cloud Lifter. And, for that application, it's going to be great. It would be difficult to use this unit in a portable application, but as long as you have AC power, you can run it anywhere. So this could be a portable unit you take with you to record a podcast on site or that kind of thing. But yeah, outside of that, it's kind of long in the tooth. This was released in 2019. There have been significantly better units released since. So, having said that, if you're like me and you want to do all of it, including recording music, possibly jamming with a band, well, it's pretty simple. Get the Gigcaster 8. You could go for the Rodecaster Pro 2, but the Gigcaster 8 beats it in pretty much every category that I've seen. Outside of that, if a unit like that's not going to be capable enough for you, you probably got to start looking at things like the Behringer XR18 or X32, which are significantly larger units with, as many as 32 channels of input and 16 channel output. But similar controls and the ability to do the same kind of things, just on a much larger scale. So if you were setting up something for an actual live band to play, and you want in-ear monitors and all that kind of stuff, that's where you start looking at these types of units. And of course, they would also make a really good interface at home in your studio too. Other potentials, the Mackie DL16S or the DL32S, and then the Soundcraft UI24R is another possibility. So you're getting into, about a $900 unit with the Gigcaster versus these units are, significantly higher, with the exception of the Behringer XR18. So, if you wanted me to dive into any of the comparisons further, to look at, say, this unit versus something like the Portacapture X8, any of the Zoom products, I've got the Zoom L8 as well. Let me know. Hit me up in the comments down below. And thanks for watching. And I'll see you in the next one.